So this is, it was called or dubbed Black Wall Street, because this, even though the surrounding areas were quite poor for Black Americans, this area was thriving, the Greenwood area. And so, so this is from the Smithsonian. So Black Wall Street, thriving, and reportedly you couldn't tell the difference between, kind of the wealth of, New York's Wall Street versus the Greenwood area, and the kind of the class of so-called Black Wall Street, Greenwood and Tulsa. Right. And so Black Americans were thriving. And so that was really upsetting to racist white America. So this is historical footage.
Absolutely upsetting. That mix of economics and racism is just a deadly one. And these things are absolutely married.
Absolutely.
The ability to exploit, the white supremacists want the ability to exploit everybody that they have under their thumb. That's what undergirds it.
There's no sound to this footage, so just take a look.
If only we had camera phones back then. Yeah. And a lot of the conversations that happen now surrounding this idea of keeping Black dollars within the Black community, this is a prime example of how we had a thriving community that was doing just that, and how it was destroyed, and 100 years on has not been replaced in any meaningful way, right?
Right.
There's an argument to be made for that. I know the data that they use for that argument, that $1 stays within the Black community for only 6 hours versus, I think it's 28 for the Jewish. I don't even know how long for the white. That data is old. It's from the early 90s, unfortunately. So we don't know what the current data is. It'd be interesting to know what that data is. But of course, nobody would commission a study on this. It doesn't support capitalism. But I'd be curious to know where we are now in 2021. And some people can get into this conversation that why do we need to focus on that sort of thing in order, to abolish racism? Well, because all of these things are economically centered together. I mean, look at all the times, even recently, right, with some of these racist Trump supporters that wanted to boycott, Otter Pops, because Otter Pops went down to the protests in Portland and gave out free Otter Pops. That made them threatening, right? So this sort of thing does happen, and we'd be silly to not acknowledge that. And there's no reason why we should be angry or upset about a Black community empowering themselves in that way. And in fact, I would say if you wanted to be a really solid ally to the Black community, you would get on board that and actively look to also spend dollars in the Black community. There's a way you can do that. I think even Killer Mike has a website where you can go online and find Black-owned businesses and buy from them directly. So this is something that we should all try to support. As we push for reparations, which is, this is like rolling a boulder up a hill. I even wrote about reparations back when I did my master's thesis. There's a lot of pushback against that because the white supremacists want to make it a conversation about race per se, right? So why is it that this is the argument they use. Why is it that me as a white person, I've done nothing I didn't own slaves. I'm not a descendant of slave owners. I've done nothing to uphold the system, but you want to punish me and take my money away and then give it to some Black folks that might not even be descendants of slave themselves. This is the kind of rhetoric they use, right? In reality, the argument has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the fact that our government failed. Our government failed, right? So they have an obligation and responsibility and should be accountable for that failure. That failure is twofold. The first part is that they took money from Black folks and they used they allowed the free exchange of labor, right? So slaves obviously didn't get paid for the work they were doing. They also weren't able to have any legacy wealth established from that lost work, right? So if you're a white person and you own, a farm and you work on that farm, not only do you make money in the here and now based on what that farm produces, there's also legacy wealth attached to that, right? I'm also going to own the property. And then, 50 years later, it's going to be more valuable. I can pass this on to my children. So there's two things that are at play there, right? That's the first part. The second part is after the slaves were freed, the government did not fulfill any of the obligations or promises it made at that time either, right? What was the saying, 40 acres and a mule kind of a thing? That didn't happen, nor were they protected. I mean, you had, following that, Jim Crow laws. So the continuation of slavery is still alive and well in this country. So again, the reparations argument really isn't about I'm taking money from white people and giving it to Black people. That's not what it's about. It's about the fact that the government failed in its obligations and should make right on that. So I want to I always try to bring that into the conversation because I think a lot of people get confused about what this is about. You know what I'm saying? What's underlying it. And there is absolute legal precedence for that.
The footage then gets into the devastation that of when the massacre occurred. So these are content warning, very, very disturbing images from this point on.
Wow.
And then I have additional footage to show you guys. Again, a lot of this is difficult, but to give you an overview from people who know, from voices who know, I wanted to pull these clips. This is Julius Peg. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but I'll assume Peguis. Talked about Tulsa, Oklahoma's historic Greenwood District and how Tulsa's African-American community overcame race riots to rebuild their community. So this is exactly what Tina was just talking about. So the community was thriving. The Greenwood District was thriving. And imagine what that district could have expanded into, the wealth that was there available for Black people. But then what happened and what it had to be rebuilt from. And I'll show you some stories where it hasn't necessarily been rebuilt and why folks are calling for reparations generally in America from slavery, but also specifically for Tulsa. So let's listen to some of what Julius has to say. And this is from C-SPAN.
And his name was O.W. Gurley. And he bought 40 plus acres in this area in early 21st century. And he began to develop this area, selling real estate to individual Blacks who wanted to own property. And the historic Greenwood area is the area where he bought this property. It became known as the Black Wall Street because of the number of business developers and entrepreneurs that came to the Greenwood area to start a business. There was a lot of promise here because although Blacks were not allowed to work in the oil fields, there was a lot of opportunity for those people who worked for the wealthier people who were in the oil business. And so there was a lot of promise there. There was a lot of promise, good jobs, good paying jobs, and the people took advantage of it. And in the Greenwood area, you had doctors, you had lawyers, you had pharmacists, you had educators, just anything that went into sustaining a quality of life for a community could be found in the Greenwood area. And that was the origin of it. People were looking for opportunities, and there was land available here in Tulsa. And so subsequently, it just flourished. And when they arrested this young man for this alleged assault on the elevator in this downtown department store, the word got around that they were going to try to lynch him. And quite naturally, the community said, that no, there isn't going to be a lynching. Okay, so the first night they went down and nothing happened. But the second night that they went down, a shot was fired, and from that, the melee started. I mean, it just chaos just broke out everywhere. And as a result, the whole Greenwood area was burned to the ground. The only building left standing was the high school. And that is where the Red Cross director, who was sent to Tulsa from St. Louis, set up the aid station that was set up by the Red Cross. The aftermath of that was that people did not have any place to live. And the city passed an ordinance that said that you could not rebuild unless you used brick. Okay? Well, brick, using brick was a prohibitive cost.
And that was a really wonderful interview by C-SPAN. Very, very important. And I think that is, he makes so many good and important points, and voices like his are not heard often.
The point he makes about not being allowed to use brick is really an important one. That kind of gets dropped into the interview and not really expanded on. But this was a means of economically controlling the population, right? And this is something we saw across the country, not just in Tulsa. We see it with, redlining of mortgages is an obvious one. And in fact, even here in California, in Los Angeles, we had redline mortgages. And I think a lot of people don't know about that history in LA County. Yeah. There's a reason that Pasadena, Altadena, and some of these unincorporated, my goodness, areas of Los Angeles County that are not in the city of LA have traditionally Black populations. It's because of the redlining of mortgages. You could not get a mortgage in LA City for a long time if you were Black. This is where all of these racist forms of economic policy, where race is married together with economics, where it's really devastating for the community, and it's by design.
And that's still happening all over. Jordan did a great interview in Detroit. It's probably now a couple of years ago or a year and a half ago due to COVID. The time is mushing together, but people don't understand the impact of redlining, and people don't understand.
Huge impact.